Your pastors are on vacation. Pastor James and Jolene, pray for them. Unless you've been a pastor, you have no clue the challenge that they go through. So I want you to pray for your pastors as they are away. This morning I want to preach to you out of the book of Genesis, chapter 16. I only have 2 points. If I was a senior pastor, I'd have 16. But I only have 2. The message is entitled, You Are the God Who Sees Me. We're going to read all of Genesis 16. Doesn't take that long. I promise I'll watch the clock, but I'm going to let God do what God wants to do. Amen? Amen? Genesis 16:1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. But she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. So she said to Abram, The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my handmaid. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian maidservant Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my servant in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Your servant is in your hands, Abram said. Do with her whatever you think best. Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants, that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now with child, you will have a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. So she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her, You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Beer Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. This story offers a very personal and poignant story about the love and compassion of God and how he deals with his people when they are broken and lost. Hagar was a slave on the run who had had enough. She had had enough of people, had enough of her personal circumstances. She had no one to talk to, no one to offer guidance. Subsequently, she was feeling alone, isolated, abandoned, used, and abused. While Hagar was on the run, the angel of the Lord, actually Jesus himself, came and confronted her. The question the angel asked her was very profound, and it was answered quickly and honestly. Notice that when the Lord found Hagar, he asked her this profound question: Where have you come from, and where are you going? Well, God, I'm running away. Where are you going to? Not a clue. Just leaving here. If anybody had a reason to run away, it was Hagar. She was abused by her handmaiden. She was given over to a man for the purposes of having a son for him. But I want you to know that this is a message that ends well. It's a message that God shows us. He knows how to take you from your worst moment and make it your best day. Thank you, Teen Challenge. As we look at the story of the slave on the run, there are only 2 points I want to make. And I hope to make clear to you this morning these 2 things. Number one, God knows where to find you. God knows where to find you. And number 2, God sees you. God sees you, even in the darkness. God knows where to find you. God is very good at playing hide and seek. The game that we all used to play as children, where you'd count to 10 and everybody would run around and try and hide, and you'd always have one kid who would always wait too late and he was found right away, and then somebody would say, "Ollie, ollie, oxen free." God started finding lost people in the very beginning of time with Adam. You remember that God would walk with Adam in the cool of the day every day, and one day Adam wasn't there, and God asked the rhetorical question, because God knew where Adam was. He just needed to hear from Adam that he was hiding. And he said, Adam, where are you?" Adam said, "I'm hiding, God." "Well, why are you hiding?" "Because I sinned and I realized I was naked." "Who told you were naked?" When you are in sin, nobody has to tell you you're a sinner. You know it. You just know it, because the Bible said that God has put within the heart of every man to know him. And until we're right with God, we'll always be chasing that joy that will never be found until you find it in Jesus. So God asked the question, "Where are you?" Here is Hagar. She had run away from life. She was deep in the wilderness. And I love the scripture in our passage. The Bible said, "And the angel of the Lord found her." The angel of the Lord found her. How many of you this morning wish the Lord would find you? How many of you this morning came into this room and you're just ready to run away because you just don't know what to do? And you thought, maybe if I come to church this morning, maybe this would be the day that God finds me and that I can find that God cares about my situation. I want you to know that God knows exactly where you are. I want you to know that God knows where to find you. There is no place you could ever run that would be out of God's sight. There's no place you can run. I'm reading now from Psalms 139, verses 2 through 12. It's a very powerful passage that talks about all of the places that you could possibly go that perhaps God could not find you, but alas, He is always there. And it says this, starting in verse 2. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even your right hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you, for the night will shine like the day, and darkness is as light to you. When God finds you, He knows how to redirect your path and your purpose. Where did you come from? And where are you going? If you have been around very long in your relationship with God, you hopefully have a story. You hopefully have a story of where you've come from. And I know that none of us really know where we're going. We just have the knowledge that if we follow God, we'll go where He takes us, and so we know we'll be okay. But for some, you need to have the question asked of you, so where have you come from and where are you going? What have you done that you're in this place in life? And where do you expect to go to make it any better? See, the evil one always has lies to tell you. He always tells you, just try one more thing. Just try one more thing. Just try this and you'll be fine. You'll find what you're looking for. But until you find God and God finds you, you'll still be in the desert looking for your hope. So God asks her, where have you come from and where are you going? How many in life are wandering aimlessly with no purpose and no plan? All you know is that life has treated you badly. With Hagar, she was abused. She was a victim. And she went to the only place she knew. She ran away. How many this morning in this room are simply running away from life? And you need to be found and sent back into the fight, knowing that God is with us. I want you to understand also that not only does God know how to find us, but He actually sees us. He sees us. God sees us. I want you to know that Hagar had a life-changing moment. Her life-changing moment started when she realized that God saw her. Have you ever been in a parade? Have you ever been watching a parade and you were just hoping that you could grab the attention of the person, maybe a celebrity who was in the parade, and you're hoping that they'll see you? You're waving and you're yelling and maybe you're jumping and you're just hoping that that person sees you. I want you to know this morning that God is walking down these aisles, and all you have to do is say, God, I'm right here. Trust me, God knows where to find you, and I promise you, God will see you. You never have to wonder if after you're waving and all the chaos, if God saw you. Trust me, God sees you. That was a wonderful moment for Hagar when she realized that God saw her, but that wasn't her life-changing moment. Her life-changing moment came in verse 13 when she said, you are El Roi. You are the God who sees me. However, the life-changing moment happens when she said, I see the God who sees me. Turn the lights on just a second. I want to see if anybody's out there. Because this would be the moment that should excite you when you hear that God is the kind of God that allows you to see Him. He's the God who not only sees you, He allows you to see Him. After that moment, Hagar was never the same. Whether you are a teenager who's pregnant, a wife who's found out that her husband is leaving her, or parents who have found out that their teenager has run away, it is comforting to know that God sees us. And God sees you this morning. But it's wonderful. It goes to the point of you've got to believe, you've got to be there to see it and to believe it. Hagar realizes that she's able to see the one who sees her. Once Hagar came to see the God who sees her, she went back to where she came from. Pastor Ron, are you telling me that she was sent back into an abusive situation? That's what the word said. The word said that God told her to go back. Now, God's not giving a general blanket order that if you've been abused, you need to go back to the place where you have been abused. But I want to tell you that God has a plan for your pain. And in Hagar's life, she needed to go back. God would protect her. He gave her a promise, and he told her, go back and submit to authority. But he also told her, your son will be the father of a great nation. So he sent her back into the place where she was abused, but he sent her back with a promise that I will be with you, I will be with your son, you will be the matriarch of a great nation, and that nation happened to be the Arab nation. How often have we needed to know that when we're in the midst of a crisis, God sees us? It's the most precious place to be. When you're sitting in your God chair, or you're in your God closet, or you're in your God car. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? How many of you have a God car? Every one of you should be raising your hand, okay? Unless you're going 155 miles an hour and God got out at 65. If you're in your God car and you're saying, God, I just need to see you today. God, this is an unbearable situation. I can't believe that I'm here. I was doing everything I was told. I was living the right way. I was doing everything you asked me to do. And all of a sudden, I find myself an outcast and nobody wants to be around me. So I've run away, God. What can you do for me? And God says, Ron, I see you. And then I get a little bit bold enough to say, but God, I want to see you. I want to see you, God. See, in the midst of your worst nightmare, God is the kind of God, He's the personal God who allows you to know, to have not only the knowledge that God sees you, but that you can see God. After Hagar had received the promise and she had the life-changing realization that she could see God, she goes back to where she came from, and they became the leaders that started the nation, the Arab nation. There's a story of David in 1 Samuel, if you'll put the verses up. David was being pursued by his enemy. First Saul, then Achish. Who was David? David was a hero. David was the one who killed Goliath with one stone. He was a stud, man. He was the man. He came out there when nobody else would dare step out behind the rocks, but David had enough belief and trust in God that God could help him defeat the giant of the day, and that giant's name was Goliath. But David was facing another giant. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel 21, 10 through 14, that day, David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." Then David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So now, listen to what David did. You almost have to read the story twice to think, is this really that guy David? Is this the man who had all the courage that stood up against a 9-foot-tall giant? Is this the man? So what does the Bible say that this brave man called David did? So he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman. David acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at that man. He's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring me this fellow to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?" And at the opportune moment, David took a hike out of there. And we go into the very next chapter, and there's one sentence that I want to read, and then I want to share with you something between the first sentence and the second sentence. So David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down there. David, being daily pursued by Saul so he could kill him, had taken a toll on him. David ran to find a new safe area with the king of Gath. But they didn't accept him. They didn't understand that David he had had it with life. And he was just looking for someone to understand him and take him in. Instead, they ridiculed him. They were afraid of him. And David left. He left and ran away into a cave. While he was in the cave, he wrestled with his position in life. It doesn't matter if you're in the wilderness or you're in a cave. God knows how to find you. There was a gap of time in between sentence 1 and sentence 2 in verse 1. Why was there a period of time? Because David didn't have a cell phone and he couldn't text his family to say, "Hey, I'm in trouble, come help me." No, there was a period of time. And in that period of time, many believe that David wrote this psalm while he was in the cave. And it almost sounds like two different people. Show us Psalm 139, 1 through 6. It sounds like two people who have written this song. "O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out." Sorry. Let me go back. Psalm 13. Psalm 13. In the cave, he questions whether God even knows he's alive. In the cave, waiting for his family to come and help him, his fear is given a voice. And it says this: "How long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Does that sound like us? It does. It does. Verse 3, look on me and answer, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. Now the switch is flipped. And at this point, David sees the God who sees him, and he said this, but I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me. He has been good to me. I will praise the Lord because he has been good to me. So in the cave, as he's running away, waiting for his family, he comes to that place in his life where he understands, even though it's a dark place, I can still see him when he shows his face to me. Worship team, would you come? Don't turn me off just because I have the worship team coming up. When David was waiting for his family, he went on a search to see the God that sees him. And I want you to understand, those first 4 verses, David was crying out in fear and agony about his scary place in life. But in verse 5, it all changes. He once again saw the God that sees him. He found new hope and strength because he once again saw the God that sees him. Now everything changes. The hidden face in verse 1 is replaced by God's unfailing love in verse 5. The anxious concerns or the panic attacks in verse 2 has become the rejoicing of the heart in verse 5. The circumstances are now turned around, and the foe that's been hot on his heels is replaced by God's divine sufficiency in verse 5. And now instead of panic, my heart will rejoice in your deliverance out of my impossible situation. And once you see the God who sees you, you can say with David in verse 6, I will sing to the Lord because he has treated me generously. I see the God who sees me, and the God that I see is more than enough. It doesn't matter how you got here. It doesn't matter where your journey has taken you. Some of you in this room are struggling with your finances. Some of you are struggling with bad health. Some of you are struggling with a bad relationship. I want you to know you have a God who knows how to find you. You have a God who knows how to see you. And you have a God who will allow you to see him. Some of you, many of you, know my story. I was in the desert. I was running away. I was running away from my position as a pastor. I was just running away, trying to find answers. My wilderness was the beach of Monterey County. On a cold, misty day in February, I ran away, and God found me. On that rainy day, I sounded like David in that last psalm. God, how long? How long will this go on? How long will I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old without a mama and crying every night because It's scary. God, how long will it go on that I have no adult companionship when the lights go out and I just want conversation? How long, God, will it be before my life turns around? This is not the way I envisioned my life to be at the age of 29 years old. This is not the way I envisioned my life to be. So on that beach in Monterey County, I began to pray and ask God to help me see the God who sees me. And as I began to pray, God began to speak to me. He told me, what you've asked for, I'll show it to you in 4 weeks. What did I ask for? Show us the first picture. 2 young-looking ladies, about the same age. The one on the left, Renee Quick. The one on the right, Stacia Fortenberry. The one on the left had also been praying that her wilderness experience would come to an end. I prayed for the woman on the left, and God gave me also the woman on the right. You see, I didn't know that God could turn my circumstances around so quickly if I just learned to look for the God who sees me. And 30 years later, I can show you another picture. Because of the darkness that was in my life, because of the wilderness experience and the pain, and I was a victim. I was a victim of a drunk driver. I was a victim of someone who carelessly got in a car and decided to drive away, and no one would be hurt. Somebody was hurt, and I was a victim. But because I was a victim, there was a beautiful person that came into the world a few years later who would be a mama to 2 children who lost their mama. She understood the pain of losing a mama. Show me the last picture. And so my family grows. You see, in the pain, you need to understand that God wants you to see Him as He's looking over you.